Welcome to The Detail. I am your host, Cathy Antunes, and you are listening to The Detail on WSLR 96.5 LPFM in Sarasota, Florida, and WBPV 100.1 LPFM in Bradenton, Florida. As you know, elections are August 18th. You can go to votemanatee.gov and SarasotaVotes.gov to find out precinct information, early voting information. Today we're talking about the race for Congress, the Democratic primary for Florida District 17. With me today is Matthew Montavon. Matthew is a native of Indiana. He was born and raised in Indiana, one of a family of 9. He worked hard, had many different jobs in farming as a janitor to put himself through college. He graduated with honors from Catholic University with a BA in poli-sci and Spanish, and then continued his education at Indiana University, earning a master's in public administration. He put that degree to great use, working on food systems for the UN for 27 years. He also worked in the D.C. area, Virginia and West Virginia, on regional planning issues. And before coming to Southwest Florida, you've been in Southwest Florida since the 90s. So you have an extensive resume, and you decided to throw your hat into the ring and run for Congress. God bless you. We'll talk about why, because it's a tough political environment, as we all know. I'm Matthew Montavon. Thank you for joining me.
It's wonderful to be here, and it's a pleasure to be able to present my campaign to the public here, the listening public of WSLR. I would just add one other element that
Sure.
I always like to emphasize. Well, I was also a Peace Corps volunteer.
Yeah. Well, it's an introduction, so I want to start off by asking you, tell us about your background. You've done quite a bit, so tell us about your work experience. Tell us about, you list policy experience, food system experience. What got you interested in that, and what was that like?
I guess I've always had that sort of inspiration of working in community. And perhaps growing up in a big family, you're always thinking about taking care of everyone that's a part of the picture.
Yeah. And
my parents were very involved in social activities. At a very young age, they took me to civil rights marches in South Bend. And then always a caring family. My father worked for USAID for some years as well. So, just the whole idea of the inspiration, sort of what came from Kennedy, that Peace Corps, the
public service
was at the time it was called American. What was it called? Well, the USAID for Latin America.
The whole ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. For your country. That was a very literal idea. People, maybe we can start there, because I could say, I grew up, I was a young kid in the late 60s, very young. And then I would say the demonization of government came in with Reagan. And he kind of made fun of it, making a joke, I'm from the government and I'm here to help, as if that were a joke. But under Kennedy, there was great respect for public service.
For working together and for everybody contributing and making a better environment. And I think that one of my first political memories was his assassination. And coming in and coming home and seeing the
I don't have that memory.
People were in, well, I'm sorry.
It's okay. That was a huge one.
Yeah, and so the shock and the sorrow that people had, because he was so inspiring. And I guess I carried that. As well as my family's being involved in social activities. And from I always looked where I could contribute. Like in college, I joined I was helping with the United Farm Workers Union and helping to organize a rally up in Washington D.C. and then taking trips to Kentucky to work, to volunteer during breaks and so forth. Always trying to find something to do, and I carried that, and that went into the Peace Corps, and then into every day when I'm at a job or at school or whatever. I was trying to do what I can to be involved in the community.
Don't you think, Matthew? Because I have, young adult stepchildren and children. Frankly, they're not so young anymore. They're 30s, 40s, even 50s, and they think the current environment is normal. Like, this is what they've grown up with or during their coming of age. This is kind of, from the beginning, I would say George W. Bush, what happened. And we look back on that like it was nothing. But there were some very serious problems with him. And, someone like you and myself, like, we witnessed periods of time when this kind of rancor and the real, I struggle to find the words to describe how awful some of what's happening is, because it just is so different from what I grew up with. And, people, I guess the phrase that comes to mind is, I don't recognize my country anymore. And I think a lot of us are just like, we want to get it back. This is not normal. And, what you're describing is that reality that too many people think we never had. And we really did. We had it for a while. It wasn't perfect.
Yeah.
But we had that.
I think we're all, sorry to say that our generation is kind of in a bit of shock at the moment, or a lot of us, because we see the potential, what it could be and how it was growing, how things were working. That's what, when I looked at the situation, and that's why I'm running. I've never been a politician before. I ran in 2024. I lost in the primary, but did very well for a first-time run. And a lot of people say you got to run twice to really know how to do it. And so I looked at the need to challenge Stubbe, seeing the horrible things he's voting against, or the bad things he's voting for, and the things he's voting against that are hurting us. And so I said, I've got to do it. And I started challenging him in that election. And I developed a column called Stubbe Watch, where I was actually reporting all the things he's done. My opponent, Democratic opponent, will claim that I'm not attacking Stubbe, but it's false. He's doing some performance attacks. But I've always been after the substance of what he's doing, to tell people this is the wrong way to go, and we've got to go to a different place.
You're talking about Stubbe.
I'm talking about Stubbe, but my opponent, my Democratic opponent, has said I'm not attacking Stubbe, and that's completely false.
Well, I think you both have very different styles.
Different
styles,
for
sure.
Exactly.
So tell me about, because there's, I think there's just the zone of stuff, we'll say.
Yeah.
There's so much happening that's concerning. Can you give me examples of Stubbe's votes, pro and con, that maybe people aren't as aware of, that have hurt Southwest Florida?
Well, he was voting against everything that Biden was putting forward, and so there was the Inflation Reduction Act, which had a lot of money for benefits for the people, as well as reconstruction in a number of areas, to put money back into the infrastructure, because our infrastructure is basically falling apart. Well, he voted against a lot of that stuff, and then he's going to cut the ribbons at ceremonies to say, he helped. He was taking credit for that.
Where if it were up to him, it wouldn't have happened.
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
And he claims to be very fiscal conservative, but at the same time now voting for this new, I call it the big bad bill. Some people call it they call it the beautiful bill, but the big bad bill, because it had so many negative elements in terms of the social programs that are being cut back and hurting people directly. And then giving so much money to the military and to tax breaks for the super rich, which we aren't benefiting from. And so we're developing a society where the rich are getting richer and the poor are or the people are struggling. The rest of us are struggling. They're seeing the costs go up and the consequences of Trump's policies. So he's buying the whole program, and it's hurting people. It's hurting people directly.
Let's talk more about that specifically, because I think, when I was interviewing Ellen Spence last week, and you guys just had a debate, my beef, if you will, with the Democratic Party is I see so many issues that they could be communicating clearly and that directly impact people's lives, because, you've got to communicate to a voter, this is how your life could be better. This is why it's not happening. How am I going to make it better? If you're a candidate, they want to know what am I going to get? Why should I vote for you? So when it comes to these affordability issues or the things that Stubbe has not supported, the things that he has voted down or up, pretend I'm a single mom or, a working dad and couple, and I'm struggling. What things would you do that are different from Stubbe that would make an immediate impact on their lives?
We have to look at these support programs, such as child care.
Yeah.
You got a child, this child care is super expensive. The federal government should be doing more, and we could easily, I think as we've seen in New Mexico, we could go to universal child care. That's something that would benefit a lot of families. It's a huge expense. We complain about, some people complain about the lack of growth in our population.
That people aren't having kids.
Can't have kids because they can't afford it. So, and then the health care, they've cut the Affordable Care Act subsidies. And I've run into a lot of people that are complaining. I used to be paying $500 a month. Now I'm paying $2,000 a month for my health insurance.
See,
these types of things where, we need universal health care. So many other developed countries have it, and it makes sense. People are happy with it. I've lived in Europe, and people are saying, this is great, we've got it. It's part of the system.
So when you say health care subsidies, I think a lot of people their eyes glaze over, and they don't really know what you mean. So what happened with those subsidies that Stubbe was involved with or not involved with, and why would you be different? So
the Affordable Care Act has been a very popular program, and it provides subsidies for people of lower income to afford health insurance.
So the government picks up part of the cost.
Government picks up part of the cost.
And why?
Yeah.
And that's actually a good investment, isn't it?
Certainly is.
In the health of the population.
Health of the population, improving people's lives. And what happened was during COVID, the Democrats put in an additional subsidy because of the whole health crisis we were going through during the COVID epidemic. But now the Republican Congress has taken those away.
They let them lapse.
They
just didn't renew them.
Right.
And the Affordable Care Act, one of the things that I find so funny is that people will make a difference between that and Obamacare. And it's the same thing.
It's the same thing.
It's the same thing. No, so people are like, I don't like Obamacare. It's just so indicative of how effective right-wing propaganda has been. That, Obamacare is bad, but I like the Affordable Care Act. It's like, wait a minute. If you like the Affordable Care Act, you like Obamacare.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, there's so many things, and I think we've lost the propaganda battle. And part of it is that because the Republicans have been able to afford it. They've got billions of dollars pouring into these campaigns and convincing people that this is the way it should be. And we've got
I think they also have a long-term strategy.
Right.
And I don't think the Democrats have done that at all. It's just been plain to me as I look at it, like this is a long-term strategy to make structural change in the government, whether it's gerrymandering, whether it's, suppressing voter rights. In the state of Florida, the Republican Party has pretty much figured out that they don't win unless they field a ghost candidate or they gerrymander or both. But anyway, so let's get back to the real benefit to people's lives. Health care, subsidies, the government contributing so that families can afford their health insurance.
Yeah.
And that's something that's to be let go that you would support, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
I think that's the way the election will be won. Mm-hmm. I think people are seeing the negative consequences of so much that's being done by Trump. And that's where you focus on the issues and say, you know, this is what's affecting you. This is hurting you, and this is why we have to stop this. Mm-hmm. And the corruption, incompetence, abuse in government. We've got the war. It's Trump's war. We can't call it the Iran war. It's Trump's war because he invented it, and American people weren't behind it. The Congress wasn't behind it. But it's costing everyday people because the price of gas has gone up $1 a gallon. So everybody's putting more. And the same with the tariffs. You know, he's invented these tariffs, which is not he shouldn't be doing that. It's a congressional responsibility to do that. Mm-hmm. But the Congress won't stop him on anything, and that's it. Stubbe's playing dead on these issues or just accepting them. And the consequence of that is the inflation in prices, in the grocery prices.
Fuel costs are felt everywhere.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it goes into the whole system. If you got to even transport that food, and so add another cost to driving up the cost of food.
You know, the thing I find so incredible about this war, Trump's war as you call it, is that it was absolutely clear from the very beginning. It was one of the reasons why there was this, you know, in geopolitical relationships, geography is part of, you know, when you study this, as you and I did, right? I studied history. You studied political science. You learn that the geography and the resources of a country have a huge impact on their position in the world and to the extent that they control those resources. So I'm getting to the Strait of Hormuz. It was absolutely known, even by the most everyday pedestrian. You know, if he got rid of the major general, somebody would tell him, well, you know, he got rid of the experts. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Everybody in the military understands that they're worth their grain of salt at all, that Iran controls the Strait of Hormuz. Why don't you poke that bear? Because this is an important strategic area. So the level of incompetence, the level of propagandized misunderstanding is very shocking, you know.
But I could give you 20 examples. Everybody in this administration practically is there because they bow to Trump, not because they know anything about doing the jobs they're hired to do. We've just hired his lawyer to run the Department of Justice. Mm-hmm. What are we going to expect from that? Mm-hmm. You know, we've got a nut, Kennedy, and running the health department. Yeah. And what do we expect from that? You know, all of these things are people don't know what the hell they're doing, or they're coming in with their ideology and trying to ram their ideology down our throats. We've got to stop it. We've got to get a Democratic Congress in place. We've got to get good people who understand these issues, who are dedicated to these issues, to make a difference. And that's why I'm running, because I feel like we've got to make this change right now. Because if we wait another 2 years, we're going to be deeper and deeper in the hole.
It reminds me of, you know, I was just 10 when the Watergate hearings were happening. Mm-hmm. And it pretty much ruined summer TV for my brother and I because, you know, it was the only thing that was on. But inevitably, he and I watched it. We both went to the same college. He studied government. I studied history. But at that time, you had, I think, Archibald Cox was asked to intervene to protect Nixon. And wasn't he the head of the Justice Department? He had an important role. And he said, he refused. He said, we are a country of laws, not men.
I think he was a specially appointed investigator to investigate the Watergate
Okay.
Yeah.
And he refused
Right.
to be Nixon's lackey.
Yep.
And he wouldn't bow down to Nixon. And they went through a number of folks until they got to Robert Bork, whose Supreme Court justice nomination was denied because he was Nixon's lackey, because he went ahead and fired people to protect the president. Likewise, the Republican Congress, and this was Barry Goldwater, it was Howard Baker, I think. There was a group of Republican congressmen that went to Nixon and said, "You're done. We're not going to protect you. You're going to get impeached and you're going to get removed. It's going to happen."
Right.
And what did Nixon do? He just had some flunkies, break into the Watergate Hotel to spy on the DNC, which is nothing compared to the stuff we're seeing now. So, I look back on those days with an affection and respect for the nonpartisanship and the standards of the United States.
Right.
And then we were an inspiration to the world. Now, it's 50 years later, and it's a completely different environment, and it is hurting us. It's hurting our economy. It's hurting who we think we are.
This is why I'm running. Because I'm disgusted with it. My opponent, he was a Republican. He voted for Trump. He probably voted for Stubbe because he voted the Republican ticket. But now he's climbing, he's running on the economics. But I'm running not just on the economics. I'm running on the social programs, on the honesty in government. In so many areas they've sold out. Unless we get people in there who could start demanding things and doing the hearings and investigating all this garbage and putting a stop to it.
The only thing I would say though is I understand what you're saying. Like you've been with the Democrats and you're a longtime Democrat, which has a lot of, a lot of value.
And I've also been working in public administration. I've been a planner. I've worked in studies in government. I was doing research. I worked internationally, so I know these international issues. I know what's happening around the world. I know the importance of our cooperation. And I've also been in community, volunteering, engaged in everything. So all these things.
It's incredibly
tell
impressive.
me, I should be, and I'm there to fight with my principles.
So I have this question though, because I was an independent many, many more years than any other affiliation. And I've been a Republican to vote in the primaries. I mean, in Sarasota County, if you want to participate in local government, being a Republican to choose a Republican county commissioner, a lot of people do that. I think, we need people who have been in the Republican Party and have seen that it's a problem and have changed their mind. So I do question, and we need people who are going to be able to win the race, right?
Yeah.
So what would you say if somebody said, yes, I think you're a great candidate. You've done tremendous things, but it may not necessarily be a weakness that your opponent has changed his mind, has come over to a party that he thinks is going to be effective. Is he better able to defeat Greg Stubbe, or are you better able to defeat Greg Stubbe, and why?
Well, I have two perspectives on that. Now, if you've come over, where at what point did you really have the judgment? And if you come over, where have you demonstrated that you've really come over? What have you done that says you have changed your perspective? Trump was doing this garbage even leading up to the election, insulting women.
I agree. I hear you.
So he voted for Trump the first time. You could say, okay, it's a mistake. But then Trump was doing the same damn thing the rest of his term, in his first term, going after immigrants, insulting everybody, stupid policies, hurting the American people, and you vote for him again. When did you, and then after that, then after the insurrection, but then he only became a Democrat when he signed up to run for office. Where has my opponent shown that he's actually changed his views? When has he talked about women's right to choose? When has he talked about gun control? When has he shown that he's out in the community? How do you go from selling stocks to suddenly saying, I'm going to be the representative representing the Democratic Party? Now, at what point do you say, is it a true commitment? Or is it a Republican in sheep's clothing, a wolf in sheep's clothing? How do you know that this is someone who's actually going to commit to the principles that he's talking about?
Okay. Tell me about your policy experience, because you spent a lot of time with the UN. You spent a lot of time in regional planning in the D.C., Virginia, West Virginia area. What did you do, and how is that helpful as, a candidate?
Okay. Well, when I was in local government, I did a lot of community planning, and so I helped with community development block grants to bring in money for activities in the area I was working in. I wrote a lot of comprehensive plans. So, that's every county, every municipality has a comprehensive plan, what they're going to do for the future. And so I was doing a lot of data collection, talking to all the different components and putting together an idea of how this county or city wants to move forward. Yeah. I did also business plans. I did transportation plans. So I know about the mechanisms of how a government works. I was with the Research Center in Washington, D.C., and so we had an advisory service. I was doing things on capital budgeting, and so writing a guide for capital budgeting for municipalities and for counties. And for Puerto Rico, I was helping with a cash flow study, managing their cash flow with the Bank of Puerto Rico. At the time, I speak Spanish. I'm fluent in Spanish, so I was doing a lot of interviewing and collecting data while I was down there. And spent a lot of time in Puerto Rico with that. Then in the United Nations, I was in an administrative role, but also very involved in seeing where projects were going and what they were doing, and with agroecology.
I think people are interested in that. I think there's a lot of concern about our food supply, about chemicals in our food supply, preservatives, that we need more local food networks. So does that resonate with you? Do you think that there's important work to be done there? What would you do or not do?
Well, I think there's important work, and I think that other countries are more concerned than we are in the United States. I think the U.S. and Europe have very big differences, because one of the areas within my department was the Codex Alimentarius, which is setting food standards for around the world for what goes into the food that is sold internationally. And there's disputes about let's say for the genetically modified foods. Right. That we're doing it like crazy here. Yeah. But the Europeans are much more cautious about it. So there's some discussion about how that gets into the international market.
Don't we have more of a big ag corporate approach to our food?
Yes, we do. I think that we need to, it would be good to look at things differently in this country. And, I could be able to be very involved in say, the food bill, the agricultural bill, the farm bill that comes out. I don't think they've passed it yet, and it's kind of been to push back. If I'm in Congress when I'm there, I would like to work on the farm bill. I have a lot of contacts of people who know issues about this as well. I think we need to do more to preserve our farmers. They're very vulnerable. There's a lot of people going into bankruptcy, and the policies that Trump has had in terms of the tariffs. And it's
soybeans.
We can't sell our soybeans. Yeah. So many farmers are suffering because of the lack of a market. And also the war has blocked the Strait of Hormuz, so the fertilizers aren't getting out, or what's available on the market is much more expensive. Farmers are saying, I can't afford the fertilizer. Yeah. If I buy the fertilizer, I can't sell the grain. for a profit because I've already
because your yield's going to be less, right?
Yeah, too much investment for the return.
Yeah, so it's not just fuel, it's not just oil, it's also impacting the food supply, the blockage of the Strait of Hormuz because of the fertilizer supply.
Right, and it's happening around the world. It's happening around the world where countries are not able to afford this fertilizer. I don't know, the consequences could be horrible in terms of the production of food in around the world, as well as our cuts to USAID and what we were sending to help the World Food Program and other international agencies.
I just want to get to, I did not know, you mentioned in your introduction of yourself that your dad worked for USAID. And of course, we saw with this initial DOGE effort, the gutting of USAID. And just on a spiritual level, I feel, and I think a lot of people feel, like the United States has been a blessed country, partly because we're so generous, partly because we truly have taken seriously that to those who much has been given, much will be expected. And USAID, whatever its flaws, I'm not saying it was perfect. People are not perfect. Institutions are not perfect. However, on balance, it seems to me that USAID did a ton of good in the world, just saved a lot of lives, fed a lot of people, supported healthcare, and that blessing, if you will, because I think most of us believe in the golden rule and most of us believe in God, that there was a blessing on the country, that our country was doing this good and we were committed to this good. And it's a huge change. Tell me about what you saw in your father's work, because he did work for USAID, and having that experience, what have we gained or lost with the change in USAID? What has the United States, the impact on us been by gutting USAID?
Well, it was a huge program, and they've exaggerated what the cost of foreign aid, and actually it's minimal in terms of really cost to the American taxpayer.
Defense spending,
compared to defense spending, yeah. And but it made an incredible impact. It established friendships and working relationships with a lot of countries
and trust,
which a lot, is a sideline to that.
We can get to that, yeah.
But at one point he was working with the Central American Common Market, and helping to develop, say, the Central American Common Market, so that the countries there, the 5 little countries, could be trading with each other so he could, have a factory in one country that services the whole region.
Which, by the way, would
impact on the immigration.
Right.
That's exactly it.
If you're concerned about illegal, help them develop their own economies.
And, then there's employment, there's things happening there. But around the world, there are things that help. It actually helps the prosperity of the world that we all could share in, that the United States could share in, because we sell products, or we could buy products from them. That whole business of building a world economy, I think it adds to everybody, and it adds to prosperity, to peace. And we rip that apart, and people are dying as a consequence of it. And we're losing friendships, and that goes back to the question of trust. Because I was reading an article, I can't remember who wrote it, but a survey of people's attitudes towards countries. And now people have more trust in China than they do in the United States.
That's pretty big.
And isn't that incredible? Yeah. China, a dictatorship.
Where did you read that? Do you remember? That's okay. If you don't remember,
if it comes to me,
it'll pop in.
Yeah, because I tried to read so much to
I'm sure you're.
Cover
so everybody, if you're just joining me, you're listening to The Detail on WSLR 96.5 LPFM in Sarasota, Florida, and WBPV 100.1 am in Bradenton, Florida. The views and opinions of guest callers. And, well, we don't have callers usually. It's usually just me and my guest. These opinions are ours. They do not necessarily reflect those of WSLR, its staff, or volunteers. My guest is Matthew Montavon. He's running for Congress in the Democratic primary election day. For the primary is August 18th. There are many local races that are actually going to be decided on August 18th. So I call it election day for that reason. And you can go to votemanatee.gov and sarasotovotes.gov to check your voter registration to find out where to vote. You can vote early right now, or in person on Tuesday, August 18th. So Matthew Montavon, you mentioned all of the experience you have with regional planning. And on this show, I often talk about land use decisions and infrastructure decisions or lack of decision. I mean, you know, one of the issues in Southwest Florida is we just build. But we saw with the storms of 2024, we don't necessarily have the infrastructure to support this building when things go wrong, when there's, flooding, for instance, which was definitely something huge that we saw in 2024. There's transportation issues. I mean, anybody around here has seen, I've lived here since 1999, and I was driving I-75. I was in sales all the time. It is incredible, the change in traffic. We build as if there's no reason to constrain that growth. We don't build in a walkable way. We build in an auto-dependent way. It's called sprawl. So given your background and given the realities of the politics in Florida and nationally, we have a certain way we like to build. What would you want to change if you were in Congress? What would you work toward when it comes to transportation, when it comes to our housing crisis? I mean, we need more homes. How would you go about solving those issues?
Some of this growth, it's really not a federal issue. It's the state and local governments that are controlling that. Mm. So it's not, in terms of overall sprawl, there's not much you could do.
I talk about that, like that's why these races matter. The local stuff is important.
Yeah, local stuff is very important. And when I was in graduate school, we used to use Florida as a model for growth because at that time they had good policies in place, and they've been slowly whittled away by the developers, so that now I'm sure they don't even mention Florida in any studies, except how bad things are.
Yeah, now it's the opposite.
But in terms of the federal government, there may be grants for transportation, and there may be focus, if you could get focus more on rail and stuff like that. Now Trump is cutting back on all the rail support and stuff, but rapid rail, there may be value in doing that in terms of the big cities like
travel other countries. The rail systems are awesome.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
But so it's I think more we have to focus on the environmental policies at the federal level.
Okay.
And to make sure we're doing what we can to protect sensitive lands and improving the flow out of Okeechobee to causing the red tide and things like that. Maybe some purchases of land.
And
that's
or something mainly the sugar industry, right?
A lot of it, but it's all of it. It's all the agricultural industry. And I think it goes back to the Farm Bill and agricultural policies and support for alternative agricultural policies and sequestering carbon in the soil. There's things that could be done in terms of encouraging and more ecological.
But it's the fertilizer runoff that's happening in Lake Okeechobee that's draining into our water systems, and then we wind up with red tide, is what you're saying. Yeah.
So there's, I think that they built an additional lake for letting that settle out. And so there's some improvements in mind. And I think there's been federal money for that. But the whole thing of, I think, we need to address climate change. We've now Trump is telling the world, we don't have to worry about climate change anymore. And he's insulting people at the United Nations with his stupid speeches and trying to cut back on all the renewable energy projects in the country. This is insane because we are facing a climate crisis, and we're seeing it more and more. And we're going to see it in Florida, too. It's going to happen. We will. It's going to get worse. We're practically at sea level. And you could build seawalls and put in additional things to try to dredge the Philippi Creek and so forth. The things that should be done and water retention areas. But all these things have to be done. But you have to ultimately address climate change.
What do we have to do?
We have to move to renewable energy. We have to move as quickly as possible to renewable energy. And I think that sometimes we have to take more control over the utility companies. In Europe, they have sometimes free energy markets. Whoever has energy could, build a system and put it into the grid. You should have a separate utility company that just runs the grid.
You have solar panels on your home.
I have solar panels on my home.
So tell me about that and how would you change things in the U.S. so people could do what you've done?
Well, we've had subsidies under the previous administration, and I had the subsidy got a 30% tax credit in order to buy my solar panels. And the same for my car. I got a plug-in hybrid, and I got a tax credit for buying a plug-in hybrid. And I'm super happy. My car gets, driving around town, and it has much longer trips now.
How much money do you think you've saved?
I've probably tens of thousands of dollars because my car now gets about 95 miles per gallon.
Wow.
Is what the history of my car is when I look at the driving history. Because, local trips, I'm just using electricity. The electricity comes from my house.
Yeah, so from your solar panels.
From my solar panels.
And you sell your excess energy to put it into the grid? How does that work?
Yeah, it goes back into the grid, and I get the lowest credit possible, the lowest price possible from the utility company in refunding me. It's like,
Do you get any say about the price?
2 cents a kilowatt or something. No, I don't get any say about the price. But I do get it comes back, and then they raise the base rate. It used to be $8 a month. Now it's raised it to $25 a month. So I'm just paying just to be connected, that $25 a month.
That's all you pay for electricity.
That's all I pay, but then I get 3 or 4 months credit because the money I put back into the grid, I get back at the end of the year. So maybe, a couple $100 might then go to pay for the base amount. So I've had free electricity essentially. And, I'm living off, I've, with the years I've had it, I've been able to, pay what I invested into it. So
how should Congress, if you're going to be in Congress, because I understand there have been subsidies, but honestly, I remember when there were outreach education efforts, people on the part of the government to say, listen, this program is available. It benefits the country in this, that, or the other way. And, you've got to understand that this stuff needs to be demystified for people. It's one thing for somebody who's really up on all this stuff like you to say, okay, I'm going to put solar panels on my home. You're comfortable with it. You understand it. You've studied it. A lot of people, they're just trying to put food on the table. This may sound like something that, what happens if my solar panels have a problem? Who fixes them? What's the cost of getting them? Maybe that's just too prohibitive. So, again, in a brass tacks kind of way, is Congress really doing all they could? Even if they got the subsidies back, don't we still need to do more?
Well, certainly. When we need to also invest in research and help the big companies. But you drive out west, you see the wind turbines out there like crazy. People realize the value of it, and I think when you have a decent government, which we don't have here in Florida, those governments are promoting it. So you'll see in Wisconsin, driving through northern Michigan, you see, a small town's got their own turbine, running their grid. You could see it happening. I'm part of Solar United Neighbors, and so they were the ones who talked me into. They were at the library making a presentation, and they said, "Well, what we're going to do is gather a bunch of interested people together. We'll get 25 houses, and then we'll do a one bid in order to get best price, leverage buying.
Power.
Yeah, so things could happen. There are people out there ready to do it, but in Florida's had no incentive. It's silly. We've got the best solar in the country.
I know,
and we're not using it.
We're not using it. Okay. So we have like 10 minutes.
Okay.
I want to give you the chance it's your first 100 days. Granted, you're not the president. Mm-hmm. Let's say you've won and you've beaten Greg Steube. You're in Congress. You've got 100 days. If you could determine the agenda, if, you're going to use your power to work with your colleagues, what are your priorities? What do you want to accomplish in the first 100 days?
First thing is to stop the evil going on in the administration, the incompetence, the corruption, the abuse. And I think that we have to get hearings going right away on so many areas, in so many departments. Bring those people in and hold them accountable.
Okay.
That has to be done. And that wherever that leads, if it leads to impeaching cabinet ministers or in Trump.
What about the Epstein files? I mean, that's something that it's like it comes and it goes, but my God.
Well,
is that part of the evil you're talking about?
Well, I think that has to be exposed, but I'm not sure that's number one. And, that'll get to.
Because I'll tell you, Matthew, I think that is a nonpartisan across the board.
Okay.
Like, people care. I care about that. Like, do we have people in power
who are
pedophiles and rapists?
But does it change people's lives? I guess that's what I'm thinking of. And changing people's lives and to try to get some of these programs that were cut, try to get them back. Well, there's so many things to do.
Yeah,
stop the war. Stop Trump's war. Mm-hmm. We're spending tens of billions of dollars on a useless game that Trump's pulled off. The abuse in the immigration. How people are treated. Those prisons. The over $100 billion going into ICE activities. That's a stain on our country. The
Some
abuse.
Of these people are Americans.
So I guess I'm thinking. I recognize the importance of the Epstein files. Yeah. But I'm also thinking about what's going to immediately impact people's lives. Mm-hmm. And it's those subsidies, the social programs that have been cut. It's abuse in immigration. It's the tariffs that are hurting our businesses. Mm-hmm. And it's the war. There's so many insane things going on, but I think they have to be addressed. But I would go after the things that impact people's lives directly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So along that line, when you're talking to voters, what are they telling you? What do they care about? What do they say?
Well, they care. At this point, I'm talking mostly to Democratic voters, but many are concerned about the cuts to the subsidies or the programs that they were participating, like healthcare, the Affordable Care Act subsidies, and to talking about SNAP programs and the need for feeding these food kitchens and what's more and more people coming to get free food. They're also talking about, I think they're talking just about the meanness in government and seeing the things that Trump's doing, the tariffs, the war, the lack of democracy. I think Democrats are particularly concerned about that issue. Mm-hmm. So those are the issues in terms of the Democratic voter and also the immigration. I've been part of the immigration. I helped start the Immigration Justice Coalition here in Sarasota. And there's a lot of people concerned about the abuses there.
Yeah, when did you do that?
It was probably early 2025.
Okay. Was it in response to ICE and what's going on with ICE?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, at that time it was still early, maybe. Mm-hmm. Oh well, no, probably about that time. Yeah. So we realized the difficulties. We had. I was president of the Democratic Hispanic Caucus here in Sarasota.
I see.
And we had people brought up the issue of we had a person working in legal counseling, not a lawyer, but and they were talking about people being arrested when they go to court to present their papers. And so we issued a press release from the Hispanic Caucus. We issued a press release saying, watch out, this is what's happening. And then other people started saying, well, we need something separate. And we felt like it couldn't be done through the Democratic Party. It had to be independent. So a lot of us moved off and decided we'd create this other group that would advocate for the immigrants.
Yeah.
So we set that up. I had to kind of leave the leadership of that when I started running for office.
Sure.
So I was talking to churches and so forth, but then I had to back away from that.
In and of itself, right? Running for Congress.
Yeah.
So tell me about the voting systems and gerrymandering. Do you have any concerns about the upcoming elections? Do you see any issues regarding voter suppression, that sort of thing?
But we have to reassure voters that they can go to the polls, that it's safe.
Yeah.
There's not supposed to be police or anything within that 150 yard area outside, or feet area outside a voting location, and just reassure people that you got to vote, or vote by mail or whatever if you're not comfortable, but still participate in the process. We have to. This is the only way we're going to restore and get back our democracy, is by people voting and saying, we want this to happen. I have fairly good confidence in the voting systems that we have because it's so dispersed between counties, between states. It's hard for anyone to manipulate a national system.
Diversified portfolio. It's not.
Yeah.
So which is, to me, when they start saying we want to federalize elections, I'm like, oh no. That is not a good idea. We need to have local oversight of our voting systems.
Just add, there's a lot of local people that are ready to stand up. The League of Women Voters and other groups that are ready to say, we've got our lawyers ready, and in case there's any dispute or something, we're ready to act.
Yeah, that's so huge.
There's a guy I know worked internationally with USAID, and he was basically working on voting systems overseas and using our system as the model for how it should be done. But now he's worried about our own system surviving, and he knows all the tricks because he's seen how it's been manipulated in other countries.
Wow.
So he's
a
people
good
like
expert.
that are experts that are ready to be involved and make things and protect our voting.
Yeah. Well, I just want to kind of open it up to you. Why should people vote for you?
Well, I would just say that I'm the person with experience, and I've shown my commitment over the years. I know government. I've been working in local government. I've been doing the things on the ground. I've worked internationally. That international experience of knowing how we work with other countries, what should be done, working at the United Nations, representing the United States at the United Nations. It's an experience that will help me get to be in Congress and start immediately to deliver. Know how to work with people. I've been in very conservative red counties in Virginia and West Virginia. I worked with all kinds of people around the world. I know how to work with people, and I've been in on negotiations and doing diplomatic negotiations worldwide. I know how to make it happen. I think you should appreciate the people should appreciate my commitment to the community. Every place I've been in the community, helping out, trying to know people, representing people, work with ARP, Habitat for Humanity, all these types of things where I'm down on the ground with people, knowing helping them know what's going on and listening to their concerns. And the same with the Democratic Party. I'm going to represent your values as Democrats, and I'm not going to get to Congress and start voting with the Republicans. You could be assured of that. I'm dedicated to the principles of the Democratic, the principles of helping the working man, of values for women's right to choose, for gun safety. All these elements are part of what I'm about, and I've shown it and demonstrated it, and I hope people will appreciate that and vote for me in the election. My website is montavonforcongress.com.
Okay, I was just going to say, if people want to find out more about you, where do they go? So it's montavonforcongress.com.
Yep.
Okay. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. You've been listening to The Detail on WSLR 96.5 LPFM in Sarasota, Florida, and WBPV 100.1 LPFM in Bradenton, Florida. Election day is August 18th. It's not just in November. August 18th is election day for many important races. Go to votemanatee.gov or sarasotavotes.gov to check your registration, to find out where your precinct is. You can vote early. You can check out early voting locations, or you can vote on August 18th. And be sure to stay tuned for more public affairs programming here on WSLR. Make it a great day.